everybody. Today we are debating flat Earth, and we're starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here for another epic debate. As tonight, we have TJump defending the globe position, and we have the plain truth who is going to be defending the flat earth position. If it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we've got a lot more debates coming up that we are very excited for, including, you'll see at your bottom right, Destiny versus Vosh is coming up. That'll be live and in person next month. Also, I want to let you know, we have a big surprise, another huge, monstrous debate on does God exist or something of that variation, and it's going to be epic. It's coming up this Friday. I can't tell because we haven't confirmed it yet, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early, but it's going to be epic, folks. Very exciting stuff. So with that, do want to also say, if you happen to have a question during this debate, feel free to fire it into the old live chat. I'll pull your questions out. If you tag me with an @ModernDayDebate, that'll help me find your question in the live chat that we can ask afterwards. And also, very excited to mention, Super Chat is an option. So if you want to, you can do a Super Chat. It puts your question at the top of the list for the Q&A, and it also allows you to make a comment if you want toward one of the speakers, to which they would, of course, get a chance to respond. So very excited, folks. We are going to basically give 8 to 10 minute opening statements. These are flexible, and the plain truth will be leading. Very exciting stuff. They are both linked in the description. So feel free, folks, if you're listening and you're like, I want more of that. Well, good news. I put those links in the description just for you, folks, so you can enjoy more of their content. So with that, plain truth, I have the clock set, and the floor is all yours. Thanks for being here.
And thanks for having me. It is insane. It is insanity to believe that we live in the world with which we have been presented. That world has no clothes. And if you are enamored with the impossibility of the garb of the pseudoscience that you see that world dressed in, you are simply mad. That world is stark, raving, bare, naked, and the smallest child knows this. He's the one with the accusing finger and the shrill voice overlaying the dumbed down masses while they stupidly ejaculate adulations for mind-screwing pseudoscience la land. Shout out to SE Montreal. Praise R, hail G, long live the vacuum of. This tiny tot of a voice of reason, sanity, common sense, and bravado decries the helio-nonsensical model has no clothes. The pseudoscientist is naked. The world in which we live is the world we've never known. In that world, water flows downhill. In that world, down is down and up is up. In that world, straight lines ne'er make a curve. In that world, angular momentum has only one effect: outward. In that world, rivers do not run uphill. In that world, Coriolis is merely apparent and the result of roundabouts. In that world, empirical observation and testable suppositions are provable. In that world, perspective trumps maths. In that world, refraction distorts what lies before. In that world, it is a fallacy to assert that ships disappear from the bottom up due to curvature. What is it then that causes objects viewed over distance, both aquatic and terrestrial, to look as though said objects are being obscured from the bottom up? Is that the only observation made of a variety of subjects viewed, or are there additional effects or alternative explanations? It is commonplace anymore to hear or even say, I've watched boats sail over the curve of the earth. In fact, it is said, legend has it, Aristotle himself claimed to see ships go over the horizon. or the curve of the Earth. Is this verifiable? Is this secondhand information? How large was this ship? What was the great rhetorician's viewer height? Was he aided by an artificial oculus? Hear this now. Never forget it. No human with the unaided eye is able to see with any semblance of acuity a maritime vessel going over the curve. No eye has that kind of resolution. At a certain point in the distance, the perception of the hull and the water becomes so blurred and irresolvable, the naked eye cannot discern what it is seeing. Not only this, but any aid to see farther into the distance will run into the same irresolvable fact. We can't see as far as we might think. This opening statement will present an alternative explanation to the ubiquitous claim summed up by the alleged astronomer Michelle Fowler. It is simply not okay to believe that the earth is flat. One of the simplest proofs that you can do yourself is to take a pair of binoculars and go out to the lake. And if there are boats on that lake, the farther away those boats are, the less and less of the bottoms of those boats will be visible till eventually only the mast is visible. The very last thing you will see is the very top of the mast going over the horizon, and that is because it's curved. End quote. But is there an alternative explanation? I will present an argument with evidence that there is. But first, a preliminary question. If we are engaged in scientific discovery, I have a question for all of the boats over the curve proponents. What alternative explanations were eliminated in order to arrive at the exclusive conclusion that boats sailing into the distance, disappearing from the bottom up, do so because they are indeed crossing a physical threshold? So, what is it that causes objects viewed over both aquatic and terrestrial distance to look as though they are being obscured from the bottom up? I call this the bottom up fallacy. In my 18 months of collecting observations of birds, houses, lighthouses, boats, islands, and oil platforms, I can honestly report that I have never observed an object disappearing from the bottom up. What I have observed and presented on my channel in numerous videos is whole objects being distorted, and that with a gradient variation. A gradient variation is the distortion of the observation occurring either in stasis or motion, concurrent with its entrance into what I have called the aether band. Everybody drink. The aether band simply refers to the medium through which the observation is being made. Band refers to that micro or macro field of view in which the observation is. For instance, with the Channel Islands, an observation either of the entire I can never say this word, archipelago. Either an observation of the entire archipelago can be made, or one can narrow it down to the, let's say, the natural 40-foot arch or the lighthouse. Okay, you have a macro field of view or a micro field of view. Aether simply refers to the air and all of the constituent parts that compose its nature. For example, but not limited to evaporation, condensation, wind, temperature, air pressure, humidity. Since the aether band is ubiquitous, its gradient is three-dimensional, and the only two variables controlled by the observer are distance and height. It is these two variables which determine how much and when the object will be distorted. The bottom-up fallacy basically begs the question that the object is disappearing from the bottom up due to physical obstruction. So it is alleged we see boats go over the curve and disappear from the bottom up. Therefore, if a boat disappears from the bottom up, they must be going over the curve of the Earth's horizon. Or, therefore, part two, since the Earth is curved, both boats will eventually sail across the threshold of the horizon and disappear from the bottom up. In fact, let's see. I copied something twice. That's fun. Here we go. Give me a second to recollect myself because I just ran into a snafu. That's fun. Let me see where I lost my place, man. All right, here we go. Yeah, this is great. I have
Hey.
no, I have no clue what I just ran into. So
I
that
will
was
give
fun.
you a second with a quick announcement. Want to let folks know if you happen to be watching on one of the other platforms other than YouTube, so whether it be D Live, Twitter, Facebook, want to let you know we are definitely excited to be on those as well. However, YouTube's kind of like our main hangout. So if you haven't come by, always happy to see you in the live chat if you want to say hello. And if you need more time, I can give you more
No, no, no.
time.
I think I said. I think I said it. For some, I don't know how I duplicated this stuff, but it did. So, give me 1 second. I'm gonna delete that part, and I should just have that real quick. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Here we go. All right, I'm just going to wrap it up this way. My alternative explanation for the bottoms up fallacy is this: objects moving into the distance are distorted by the manifold and diverse effects of the ether band. These effects are all related to refraction, and they find their expressions in the broad category of mirage. Boats going into the distance are not obscured by anything physical due to Earth curve. It is always, only, and ever will be due to the effects of the Aether band. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks so much. Next, we will kick it over to TJump, TJump as he likes to go by. So, with that, Tom, you have 10 minutes and the floor is all yours. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, James. Thanks, The Plain Truth, for coming on and talking about this topic. So, when we talk about science, what science says is that there's infinitely many ways to explain anything. Like if you see a cup fall over, maybe the wind knocked it over, maybe it was a squirrel or a bird, maybe someone bumped the table it was on, maybe it was invisible aliens, maybe somebody used magic or psychic powers to knock it over. There's infinitely many ways you can say, well, what knocked over the cup? The same thing applies to all the observations we see, like the ships passing over the horizon, or the fact that there's water on the surface of the Earth, or the fact that we see lots of different things, like, the space stuff in space, like satellites in the ISS station. There are infinitely many ways to explain all of that, and so the flat earthers can definitely create alternative explanations for everything. But the true test of a hypothesis and what makes science science is, if you want to say that your explanation is correct and the others are wrong, you have to make a novel future testable prediction, meaning you have to say, if my hypothesis is true, here is something we don't know yet, something we haven't seen consistently in the past. And if we do this experiment, we can find out that it's true. So predicting things we already know, like the sun is going to rise tomorrow, isn't evidence, because we already know what's going to happen. So you have to predict something we don't already know. Now, the globe hypothesis has done this over and over and over and over again, repeatedly throughout history. So we know it's true, just like we know evolution is true, just like we know any scientific hypothesis is true, because it makes predictions that we can use to model the world, and it gets things right. Whereas the flat Earth model gets things wrong. For example, one thing is like the Coriolis effect. If you want to get an accurate calculation of essentially a ballistic object and try and get it to hit a target a certain distance away, you have to add in the calculation of the Coriolis effect, and you can just take two different mathematicians, a flat Earth mathematician and a globe mathematician, one who does the Coriolis math and one who doesn't, and shoot two bullets, and you'll find out that the Coriolis effect exists, because the one where the Coriolis effect math is done will get the hits, and the one that doesn't won't get the hits. There's also the Foucault effect, or the pendulum effect, where if you have a giant pendulum hanging in space, it'll go in a big circle slowly. If the world was flat, I mean, there's no really reason for that to happen. Maybe, but you can also, again, you can explain it in many different ways. So maybe the flat Earth is also spinning for some reason. So all of these things are explainable and predicted before we knew them by the globe model, whereas the flat Earth model has predicted nothing. It's just the post hoc way to explain stuff we already know in a different way, which anybody can do. You can. That's what Christians do. That's what homeopaths do. That's what everybody does when they come up with pseudoscience. Is they take everything we know and just explain it in a different way. And yeah, you can definitely do that, but that's not actually evidence. To be evidence, you have to make a novel testable prediction, predict something we don't already know that we haven't seen before. And if you can't do that, then you have no reason to believe your hypothesis is actually true. We have pretty good reason to believe the world is round, like pretty much absolutely, is because we've been to space. We can turn around and look and it's round. And that's like absolute proof. We're done. Okay, let's go home. Anybody can rent a weather balloon. You can tie a camera to it, any other kind of camera you want, fisheye lens, non-fisheye lens, anything you want. Have it go up in space and you can see the curvature for yourself. Okay, we're done. Let's go home. Other ways we can do it, we can look at space. We can see there's the International Space Station and satellites. We can just use a telescope and we can see them in space, and we can calculate based off of the zoom of the telescope. And if you don't trust it, you can just build your own and calculate it that way. That's fine. How far away it is, what the size is, how fast it's moving. And apparently it's just being held up there by magic if there's no space. So, well, we know there has to be space because there's these large objects that are just sitting there in the sky unless NASA like climbed up to the firmament and just like stapled some staples in there just to hold them up or something. I don't know. But so we know that there's space, and we know that there's these large objects in space, and we've been to space, and they've brought cameras, and they can just turn the cameras and point them back and look at us. Pretty reasonable they've done this. And we can see that there are other planets out there in space with these telescopes that we use. And we can see that they're covered in gas because of the motion of the stuff on the planets. We can compare it to the motion of the stuff on Earth. Like, well, does it work like a solid? No. Does it work like liquid? No. Does it work like gas? Yes. Okay, it's a gas. And it's all around a big ball in space. So something is holding it there. And we can say, well, whatever's holding that gas around those planets is probably also holding the gas and water around our planet. Pretty simple. And we can make a calculation and say, well, how far away are these? What is their size, by using many different techniques that are pretty simple to calculate, like parallax or whatever method you want. And so we can know that they're pretty massive, much bigger than Earth. And if we imagine living on one of these planets and standing somewhere on the surface that is mostly gas anyway, we would be able to see the same thing we see here, that ships would go bottom first over the horizon, that it would appear as if the ships would always go, that all objects would go bottom first because it's on a globe. Like, can you explain it a different way? Sure, that's definitely possible. Is that evidence? No, it's not evidence. And so we can see that, well, everything in the solar system is round and a ball. And so to think that for some reason, that even when on those planets, we would see the exact same things we see on these planets if we lived on those, and they're balls, to say that, well, no, ours is just a flat disk, and it's the only flat disk. We don't see any other flat disk anywhere in space or anywhere we look ever. It's kind of crazy. Like, there's no reason to think the world is flat, except for just the intuitive notion that, well, when I look at stuff from the ground level, it kind of seems flat, which is pretty terrible evidence. Like, if we look at everything else, it's pretty screamingly obvious that the world's a globe, just like all the other globes out there. And all of the laws that apply to those globes also apply to this globe. And so what we see when we look at the world is exactly what we'd expect to see if we were standing on those, because they're globes, and this is a globe. So we have pretty solid evidence to confirm that we're on a globe. It's indisputable pretty much, even though if you can't explain all of the different things in many different ways, which is called the problem of underdetermination, none of that's actually evidence. The fact that you can explain it in a different way isn't evidence that your alternative explanation is true. To have evidence, you need to make a novel future testable prediction. So you'd have to say, if flat Earth is true, then here is some prediction I can make that we can do an experiment for, that we will see something different than what is expected for by the globe model that we don't already know, something we haven't already tested. If it's something that's already been done, we already know, well, then that's not evidence. You got to predict something new. So like, if we took a plane, like if we stole a plane or something from the airport and we just flew it in some direction, we would see an ice wall or something. Like that would be good evidence. Then if we flew over the ice wall and we got to more land, well, that would kind of disprove your hypothesis. We just would be on a globe, because we just in a circle. We traveled like from North America, went over the what is it, South Pole, North Pole, and then came back on the other side to Asia or Russia, we'd know we were on a globe because we just went over the ice wall and there's no like more ice. There's land over there. We just go around the entire world multiple times doing this, so we can tell we're on a globe. But until you can actually make a novel testable prediction for flat Earth, then you don't really have any evidence, and we can make tons of them for the globe Earth model, and they're always right.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Tom. So next we will go right into open discussion. So thanks so much, folks, for being here. The last time that I think that I got to be here for a live stream was it Monday? So I honestly am like, oh, it feels so great to be back. It's been too long. All right. Well, anyway, thanks everybody. All right, here we go. Open conversation. Thanks guys for being here. The floor is yours.
You want to go first, Tom?
Well, actually, I'd like you to tell me like what kind of a flat earther are you? Like, because there's some that believe space does exist, some that believe space doesn't exist, some that accept like the International Space Station, some that don't. Could you tell me like which specifically kind of flat earther? How far do you go in your flat Earth belief? What do you accept? Don't you accept about the scientific worldview?
Okay, so I try to base my understanding of the world on what I experience and can empirically validate or test or understand myself, and not necessarily have to exclusively depend upon outside sources. Of course, I know that deferring to authorities in certain areas is always an inescapable reality. But ultimately, in terms of talking about this, three things that I try to approach, and that is that this is common sense, this is logical, and it is also sensible. And I differentiate between sensible and common sense, in that in terms of sensible, our senses can be relied upon. Okay.
So you mean like empirical? Because empirical is just things that we get through our senses.
If you want to use that term, that's fine with me. I'm just trying to be a little bit more specific rather than just simply saying empirical. I suppose I'm trying to make sure that I cover my base and let you know where I'm coming from. So based on that, since I cannot elevate myself any higher than a white boy who can't even dunk a basketball, right? So I've got no vertical jump whatsoever. So all of my experience is here on good old terra firma. And I do not make my arguments based on anything that is in the heavens, anything celestial. If you want to bring up those arguments, by all means, you're free to do so, but they're not my arguments. I can talk about those things in a logical fashion. I can analyze those ideas in a reasonable way, but I don't make arguments based on anything that is outside of, I guess, my ability to test and confirm for myself.
Okay, so do you believe in space, or do you say there is no space?
I do not believe that the concept of space as it has been presented to us is reality.
Okay. Like, do you believe the International Space Station is above us somewhere in the sky somewhere?
Sure. So, I mean, I would appreciate it if we stuck to the arguments that I presented in my, or the argument basically that I presented in my opening. If you want to entertain these questions, since it's open discussion, I guess you can go down these roads. You're perfect.
Well, again, I'm just trying to get an understanding of your viewpoint right now.
Sure, but these questions ultimately are irrelevant to my opening statement. These
no, yeah, they're relevant to like my argument. Like, I don't want to start somewhere that you don't already accept, and then just skip over something. Like I did that once with the flat earther, where I started like assumed that they accepted space and they didn't, so I had to go back. And so I'm just trying to figure out where the starting point is. That's it.
Sure. So go ahead and start over then, or go back to what you just asked.
Okay, so you believe the International Space Station is there?
I have never seen the International Space Station. I've never looked forward to transit the moon or anything like that. So personally, I've never seen it myself. So it's all hearsay. It's all the story that's up there. You know, I can believe it. The things that I've seen on YouTube or on television, CNN or things like that, those things, in my opinion, are dubious. I'm not impressed by the presentation of those images.
All right, sure, I can grant that. But the International Space Station, you can go buy a telescope or build one if you don't trust the ones that you can buy, and you can just look up and see it. So
Sure.
you can actually see it like satellites. There are many satellites that you can just, if you have a powerful enough telescope, you can just look up and see in space.
Yep.
So that's something you can see for yourself, that it is
Yep.
there.
Yep.
And so it is suspended above us quite a big distance. We can actually calculate the distance by using the magnification of the telescope to know how far away it is and how big it is. So it's in what would classically be called space. And so you said you don't accept the classical notion of space as it's presented to us, but you would agree there is something up there that can essentially hold this massive object without any suspension, as far as I'm aware, just in essential nothingness. There's no, it's not like engines or anything that's holding it up. So what would you call that?
I would call that a nice story.
Well, again, we can see it. So which part of that wouldn't you accept?
The part that I wouldn't accept is that it exists in a medium that is able to sustain its weight and, I suppose, its movement. So we exist here on Earth in a medium, right? We have an atmosphere, we breathe air. Other animals can live inside of the ocean, right? So they exist in that medium. And in those media, the reality is that things fall, things travel downward if it's heavier than the medium. If space is a near vacuum, if it's basically empty, if it has no substance to it, there is no medium. I don't know of anything in my world where something can float in nothing, right? So if we make a vacuum here on Earth, something doesn't float in it. So we can't reproduce the alleged motions and dynamics that are said to be above our heads. If anything is going to be suspended in the air above us, it has to be done so by a mechanism like propellers or hot air, if it's not animal, right? If it's not a bird. Birds are the only animals that I know of that can sustain themselves in midair, right? So that would be my analysis of not believing that there is something up there defying the physics that we understand here on Earth. So in other words, again, I would like to see that phenomenon.
Okay. Yeah,
Here.
that's good. So yeah, we can actually see that phenomenon here. So we know the higher the elevation we go, the lighter we weigh. We can measure the weight of an object at lower elevation and it's heavier, and then we raise it up, the weight is lighter. So that we know the further away we get from the surface of the Earth, the lighter and lighter the object is. So you mentioned like if the object is heavier than the medium, it would fall. Well, if you keep going up far enough, just following this pattern that we can demonstrate here on Earth, eventually it's going to get to weigh essentially nothing, and it's just going to be able to not move.
Sure, I understand that's the narrative again, but you've now still eliminated my ability to reproduce what you're demonstrating. I cannot.
Well, no, you can do this. So you can just measure it in a plane. If you go up in a plane, you can measure the weight of the objects decreasing. So that's something you can measure.
Okay, so what variables were eliminated to end up with the only alternative, which would be that the higher things go, the less they weigh? Is there, or do you have a list of alternative explanations for that phenomenon that were eliminated?
That's not how science works. Science doesn't ever eliminate alternatives. It can't do that by definition. So there's always infinitely many alternatives to explain everything, just by necessity of the problem of underdetermination. So what indicates one over the other is whether it can make future testable predictions, whether we can predict something is going to happen before. Like if we say, assuming that the world is flat and we go up in the atmosphere, we're going to weigh the same at any point. Or if we assume the globe model, then the higher up in the atmosphere, will weigh less. And then we test it and see which one is the case. And we say, well, oh, the
Okay.
globe model got that right. So that would be evidence for the globe model. So
Okay, so
we can't actually eliminate the alternatives. That's not a possibility. Like we could all be in the matrix or whatever, and we can't eliminate that possibility. Or we could all be deluded by Descartes' demon, or there could always be infinitely many other alternatives. We can't eliminate them. All we can do is say the best hypothesis is the one that can make future
sure.
predictions.
Okay, so let's just go back a little bit to what you had said at the beginning of your statement. I think the very first thing that you said, that there are an infinite amount of ways to explain why things happen, right?
Yes, always.
Okay, so there are an infinite amount of ways to explain why something happens. So my question still remains, how did you end up with the only alternative explanation for why things apparently weigh less the higher you go? So in other words, what's the cause? Okay, so I've never done this test, so I'm hearing it now for the first time from you. So I'm just going to take it at face value. Have you ever measured these phenomena?
Yes, actually, it's fun
Okay.
science experiments when you go on a plane.
Okay. So what was your experiment?
It was like a high school thing. I don't remember it. This is one of the things we did on high school, so it was a while ago.
I mean,
But
can you just kind of make up? I mean, basically giving the idea of how you guys went about your test.
from that many years ago, like I could look it up, but it's you can just
Okay.
Google
Okay.
it.
Fine. That's fine. If it's that difficult, don't worry about it. So just again, because this is your claim, but just walk me through the basics. I'm not trying to catch you out. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Just walk me through the basics
You weigh an
of,
object here on Earth, you fly it up into a plane, and you weigh it again, and it'll be less.
okay, and what's the explanation for why that happens?
That would be gravity. Gravity is higher the closer you are to the source of the gravity, and lower the further away you are from the source of the gravity.
So gravity, okay. So the weight of an object, the closer it is to the Earth,
It's heavier. So
is
the closer to
heavier.
the surface is there. It's heavier.
Okay,
and the
does it matter if you remove yourself from the Earth itself? Like, do you have to go up in an airplane? Can you go up, let's say, a really high mountain and weigh something? Is it going to change then too?
Yes. Not by as much, but yes.
Hmm. Okay. So it sounds to me like this explanation depends upon the reality that gravity exists. Otherwise, if there is no gravity, then gravity can't be the cause of this phenomenon if this phenomenon can be validated, correct?
I have no idea what you just said. Like, there's
Okay.
always other ways to explain it. Like, I could just say magic leprechauns are just making things
Right,
lighter.
right. So my question still remains, how did you end up with gravity being the only alternative?
Right, there's future testable predictions. So the way science works is, like, to use my example of the cup falling over. If a cup falls over and we have a whole bunch of people who say, I can explain it by the wind, or I can explain it by a mouse, or I can explain it by a squirrel, the one that's right is the one that can say, my explanation is that a squirrel did it, and we can know that because when we look at the cup, we're going to see squirrel droppings around the cup. Now, we haven't done that yet, so we don't know if there are or not. But if we look at the cup in the future and say, oh, yep, there's squirrel droppings, my hypothesis that it was done by a squirrel is now more supported than any of the other hypotheses because it could predict something that we didn't know yet.
Sure. So the prediction is, if you remove an object from the surface of the Earth and elevate it to, let's say, is it going to change at 10 feet? Like if I raise something up 10 feet high, is its mass going to change?
Yes, but not by a noticeable amount unless you have a really, really sensitive weighing device.
Okay. All right. So you're making a prediction. The prediction basically is, if I remove this object from the surface of the Earth to a higher elevation, it's going to weigh less. And then you get up in your airplane or your hot air balloon or whatever it is, and you weigh it and it weighs less. Okay. So
Yep.
you have an observation, you have a phenomenon, right?
Yep.
Yep. So how have you proved the cause?
So you can't prove anything. It's always just whichever one makes the prediction. So we started with a bunch of people who had ideas like, if the world is flat and we go into space, we anticipate there's going to be no change in weight. There's not going to be change in weight. And the globe
Okay,
model says
hold
we're
on,
going to say,
just real quick. I'm sorry. I feel like this is a bit of a red herring. I think it can be an easier answer than telling a story that is moving us away from.
well, the answer is future testable predictions. The globe model predicted this was going to happen before we knew it, and we did it, and then it got it right.
Okay, so you've just said something. The globe model made a prediction before we knew it. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so what prediction did the globe model make before you knew it?
The that when things get higher up, they get less heavy.
So okay, it sounds to me like you're simply describing a reality. There's
No,
no,
no, no. So we didn't know this yet. We predicted this. If there is gravity, then this is what you would expect. We
okay,
tested this, and then oh, yeah, this happens.
okay, so now we're going into formal logical arguments. Okay, so which came first? Okay, follow me just real quick. Which came first in this scenario? Did someone weigh something and then make a conclusion based on that phenomenon? Or did someone make a prediction before the measurement was made?
Prediction before the measurement was made.
Okay, so why would someone suppose that that phenomenon would even happen?
Because of gravity. So they hypothesized gravity, that a gravity is caused by massive objects, and that being closer to a massive object causes more gravity, which is what your weight is, and then being further away will cause less gravity. And so then we could use that to predict, well, if we go up farther away from the surface of the earth, well, then we should weigh less. And then they could predict it. And so now we can test it. So we made the prediction, and then we can test it by going to a plane or something with a scale, and then see, are these objects lighter?
Yeah, I still go back to the fact that you haven't. I don't believe you've actually moved beyond describing a phenomenon and attaching an interpretation to it. So you have used your example of a cup falling off, and it could have been the wind, it could have been a cat, could have been a squirrel, could have been you, whatever. Okay. Um, it seems to me, again, you haven't proved the cause. You've simply just attributed the phenomenon to what you believe to be reality. So we have to actually go back and now prove your cause. So I think the burden still falls on you to prove that gravity is.
I'm not sure what you mean here. So in science, that's a proof. Like if you say, I have a hypothesis of something, and I'm going to predict this new thing is going to happen that we've never seen before, and we discover it, that's a proof. That's kind of how scientific proof works. It's not really a proof because there's no such thing as proof except in math and logic. So that is the epitome of scientific evidence. Like Einstein predicted that if general relativity is true, then we would see that the bending of light around the sun would happen at this exact rate. Then he measured it and we found it was at that exact rate. If general relativity is true, then we'd find the bending of space-time due to gravitational waves, and we used a LIGO detector, and we discovered that. And if general relativity is true, we would discover a whole bunch of other things, and we discovered those were true. And that's why we accept general relativity as true. It's not because we proved it; it's because it made testable predictions that are right. And that's as close as proof as you can get in science.
Yeah, again, though, in my opinion, I'm not satisfied with your conclusion that the reason why this object weighs less at a higher altitude due to gravity. So, I mean, you can make that argument if you like, but I'm not convinced by it.
So do you not accept that the scientific methodology is reasonable?
Well, let's see. That's the first time you've, at least as far as I know, mentioned the scientific method. So can you just give me your basic breakdown of what those variables are?
Well, yeah, it was what I was describing. So we see some event, some phenomenon, the cup falls over. and we can come up with different hypotheses, an infinite number of them. And the one that can make the future testable predictions and gets it right is the one that is the scientifically accepted one. That's the scientific method, essentially.
Okay, so you observe a phenomenon, and then you predict a cause. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you want to validate your prediction, right?
Yep.
And then if you validate your prediction, what's the conclusion?
Well, it would be you see a phenomenon, you hypothesize a cause, then you make a prediction. Like you'd say, if my hypothesis is true, here's some other thing we're going to see that isn't, so it's not what we see. So we have to predict we're going to see something else that we don't know about yet. And then we have to do an experiment to see if we do see that. And then if it's verified, then we have good reason to believe that that hypothesis is better than any of the other hypotheses. It's the one we should accept.
Okay, so again, it seems to me after you see your phenomenon and you want to predict the cause, I'm still pressed to say to you that I don't believe you've proven a cause. You simply still have a phenomenon whose cause you haven't proven.
Well, again, I'm not exactly sure what your epistemology here is. So in science, that method that's as close as you ever get to proof for anything ever.
Okay.
That's it. That's as close as you get. Like you
Yeah.
can't ever prove anything. It's just.
Well, I disagree with that statement wholeheartedly, 100%. But
okay, what do you mean?
I disagree with your statement that you can't prove something.
Can you give me an example?
Can I give you an example of
proving something? What can we prove?
Well, obviously we can't prove anything because we could be living in the matrix, right? Like you
Right.
said earlier. Okay.
Right.
So, but I don't believe that that is a valid expression of the reality that we live in. I believe that we all believe that reality is what it is. We behave certain ways. I can prove to you that if I drive down the left side of the road here in the United States, that I will either cause an accident or I will be pulled over by the police. Okay, I can prove that to you. Okay, so I'm just making that up off the top of my head. I can demonstrate to you, that I'm talking to you right now. I can prove to you, based on my opening statements, that the alternative explanation for obstruction due to earth curve, in the explanation that boats are going over a curve, I can demonstrate and prove to you that the alternative is the cause, which is what I would prefer to do in this whole debate, because that was my opening statement. But again, going back to the way that you have packaged your argument, because you chose to use an analogy of knocking a cup over, I believe that you could prove the cause. You can prove that it was a squirrel. So you have proven something. You can prove it.
Okay, go with that. How would you prove it was the squirrel?
Okay, this is not my argument. This is not difficult to understand. If you have 4 different people who are going to offer an explanation, and you have no way of validating any of their explanations, then no, you're not going to be able to prove anything. Okay, but that's not what I said. I said you can prove it. It just depends on how much evidence you have.
Okay, how would you prove it was a squirrel again?
Okay, this is not my argument. I'm telling you, I believe you can provide enough evidence so that you are left with no alternative but to say, you have just proven to me that this event happened.
Right. I'm asking for you to do that. So, for example, your car example, you could be pulled over because you have a broken light and they didn't pull you over because you're on the wrong side of the street, or maybe everyone switches sides for one day. There's lots of different alternative explanations for that too. Maybe.
Okay. Have you ever lived in the United States where one day
Yes.
they decide to switch and drive on the other side of the road?
It could just be a brain function where you
I'm
had a
sorry.
neurological switch.
Have you ever lived anywhere in the United States where all of a sudden one day they just decide to drive on the other side of the road?
No.
Okay, that's a non sequitur. Then you're making up stuff that has
No, no,
nothing to
no,
do
no.
with
That's
my
the point. There
argument.
are alternative explanations for what you explained. You didn't prove anything. Nothing you said proved that that was the
Okay,
cause.
right.
You
In this
assumed it
moment
was.
right now, we are discussing non-reality.
Just
Okay,
to,
we're not just. Go ahead, James.
I hate to interrupt. Just to be sure we kind of keep with the, if you were able to explain, maybe it's actually a good segue to get back to kind of the core broader topic. If you kind of explain broadly how this like links back to the broader topic of the debate, flat versus globe.
Well, I'm still confused by the fact that he thinks we can prove anything. I mean, that's just demonstrably false. We know we can't. We know it's a fundamental fact in science. We have this problem of underdetermination. But I mean, yeah, we could just move on to. He says he could prove that the the ships falling over the ocean is caused by his aether something. We can go to that.
Well, the aether band is the term that I have chosen to describe what we are used to seeing. We see the effects of the conditions of the atmosphere in the normal way that we speak. The atmosphere is simply the air that surrounds us. So the argument that boats going over a curve runs into some difficulty when we discuss this matter, because there are times when the alleged horizon isn't always in the same place. So let me drop this down. Give me 1 second. I think if I do that, I hate it when this window goes down. I'm going to open this back up. I'm going to try to share. Can I share, James? Okay. So I'm going to share this. This is going to be just a bit brief, because I don't want to take up a ton of time trying to yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to give you an illustration of something that made sense to me in my observations as I have made them here in the Chesapeake Bay. Is there any way I can get rid of this window? You see this? Can you see this window? You see this window, right? How do I get rid of this so it's not here? Minimize. Right. Can you spot the difference, right?
One picture is lower than the other.
Okay, just give me a second. Okay. So this is a capture. This is a still shot of the same observation taken on 2 different days. This is 22 days apart, September 7th and September 29th. You have here a clearer day where we can see farther. Okay. And we have a less clear day where we have an inferior mirage. Now, the point at which we can no longer see the water extending into the distance is the limit of the mirage closest to us. This blue line above here is the beginning of the mirage, if we understand that this is the physical land, just like this is the physical land over here. This physical land is being mirrored on itself, so that everything between these 2 blue lines is the mirage. Okay. This mirage becomes the obstruction for anything once it passes this line. If it goes far enough into this area, its angular size will decrease because it's moving into the distance. And because of that, it will disappear into this mirage. So, by way of contrast over here to the left, we can see that there is physical water that continues to go into the distance 12 miles away. The water goes all the way into the distance. Okay. So my argument is that when we start to talk about objects crossing over this line, let's say in the ocean, this becomes our horizon. So let me switch over real quick to, what was I looking at today? Trying to remember where I was pulling those up. Give me 1 second to pull that up. Where was I pulling those? I was watching those videos today. Sorry. Yeah, just give me a second. I'm gonna maybe pull up.
Everybody just let
Talking
me
to
know.
myself.
Everybody let me know that I'm muted. So embarrassing. Thanks so much, you guys. So, want to let you guys know what I did say. I'll put it long story short. We failed to launch yesterday. We had basically a debate that didn't get to happen. So we are going to have it tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. TJump, the one and only, is going to be here debating a newcomer. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And I mentioned already that this coming Friday, we are going to have an epic one, folks. It's one that will knock your socks off officially. I can't announce it yet because they're like, I just want to be respectful of the debaters, but because in other words, they're kind of like, yeah, I think I can do it, but I don't know for sure. And so I'm like, okay, well, I won't announce it yet, but we will announce it Monday. And then Friday, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. And it's going to be epic. So that's it. Plain truth, the floor is yours. Are you there, Plain Truth?
Yeah, but I'm wishing I wasn't. Can't find the blasted video that I want to show.
That's all right.
So I do apologize. I was looking at it earlier today, and
That's all
now
right.
I just am not able to pull it up. So give me just 1 second.
We've been going for like an hour. Did you want to like move to Q&A at some point?
That's
eventually?
a good idea, yeah. We actually, so someone asked this coming Friday. No, it won't be Kent Hovind. By the way, Kent, yeah, we're trying to like work on our relationship. Our professional relationship is, you know what? I will take responsibility for it. I have made my own mistakes, but I also sometimes our communication lines get crossed. So, but we do think Kent Hovind will eventually be back someday, but it might actually be a while this time. And we hope for it though, and no, it won't be Vosh versus Destiny, and no, it won't be Flat Earth. But it's going to be a guest who we've only had on one time, and it's just people loved it so much that we're like, hey, we would love to have you on again. And there was a person that was like a great match for him, so we were like, hey, this is like perfect timing. So long story short, we will go into Q&A, folks. If you happen to have a question, fire that old question into the old live chat. I'll pull it out, and I will ask it if we have time, which I think we do. Neither of you guys have to go anywhere, right?
Not for the moment.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Am I off mute?
You
Can you
are.
hear me?
We can hear you for sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm just totally racking my brain. Like I cannot figure out why I can't find the video that I was looking at earlier today because it had everything that I mean I just have no idea why I can't find where I was playing. But can you see my screen right now?
Yeah, that's the Mona Lisa.
Okay, so I'm not sharing.
I don't think so.
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. Because how about now?
I see your folders.
Yes, all of your
Right.
embarrassing files.
Yeah, I don't have any embarrassing files, but I'm trying to now locate.
Oh snap! Praise said I'm debating. Oh, I haven't debated in a long time. I'm gonna like in March. I'm gonna release like an old debate one, long before I dominated Tom and he cried on video. It was
Yeah,
embarrassing.
you still haven't come back for that third Pascal's wager because you've just been crushed so much.
So you didn't invite me back on because
No, I
you
did.
were like,
I invited you like 4 or 5 times,
You
and
serious?
you've just never said yes. You
Tom,
said,
I am
"I don't want to do
so-
it. Oh, I'm so afraid." You just
I'm
crushed me
so
so
in.
bad.
That's what I said. Yes, I said you. It's I just can't stand getting crushed. But the debate, I'm gonna like release an old one that I found from like almost 6 years ago. So it was with an old friend named August. He's a really pleasant fellow. But
Berkshire?
yeah, it was August Berkshire. Yeah. So let's see.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I'm ready. But again, like I said, I have no clue why I can't pull up that video that I was playing before. So this is a stream that I did earlier today. I'm just going to mess with this as best I can. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Sort of.
All right. So what we're looking at right now is two ships or two boats sailing into the Mirage. Okay.
Yes.
It's pretty pixely.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's a copy of a copy. Okay. So right now we have the water. Okay. The water is going into the distance here. And this is where the physical water ends for us visually. Okay. The water is ending here visually. This water is not going over a curve beyond this spot. We know this because boats float on water. This boat is going into the distance. It is getting smaller. It is not disappearing from the bottom up. The entire boat is mirrored on itself, and so it is now distorted due to refraction. This boat is farther away than this boat, but this boat is undergoing the same refractive distortion that is becoming the reason why we cannot see the bottom of this boat clearly. As it moves farther and farther into the distance, we understand that these boats, even though this one looks like it's up above the water, it's not. It's floating on the water. We just cannot see the water. So this simple understanding of physics with boats on water in proximity to us, okay, when we get into situations like this where we have other demonstrations of inferior mirages, this is a sailboat, okay, but we cannot see the hull of that boat, right? So where is it? It's in the mirror band, okay? It's in the mirage. But what we normally do, we normally default by saying, okay, here's where the water stops. And when we make these arguments out on the ocean and we see the water stopping, we assume that the reason why the water is stopping is because it's going over a curve. Okay. But when we understand that there is an alternative explanation for what is obstructing the boat, that explanation of boats going over a curve doesn't become the exclusive explanation. There is an alternative explanation, and that is that it is due to the refractive distortion that is happening in the air. So I can prove that this boat is not over a curve because we understand that physics demands that this boat exists on a medium, and that medium is water. This is the beginning of the mirage here, and the fold line or the vanishing line of the mirage is cutting straight through the sails, and due to the vanishing line, that is where the mirage obstructs what's behind it.
You got it.
Okay. Okay.
You betcha. All done, or you have another one?
Well, I mean, I could go on. It's just a matter of discussing the reality that we have, that mirages are the obstruction. Okay, the mirages are the reason why we can't see things. Okay, this is a very highly refractive day. This lighthouse is 6 miles away. Okay, if we weren't familiar with this lighthouse, we might think that this lighthouse goes all the way down to the water. Okay, but that's not the case. The water does not go up to the base of the lighthouse. The lighthouse is about 50 to 60 feet away from the shore, and it's about 10 feet off the water. So it has an elevation of 10 feet, and then it's got a distance from the shore. So why can't we see the base of the lighthouse? Why can't we see the sidewalk here? This object right here is the historical cannon that sometimes you can see and sometimes you can't, depending on how strong the mirage is. Now, this is a video that I took of my friend Brian, who came to help me with making these observations. He is standing right here, and he is going to be flashing a mirror. Now, he is standing on the sidewalk where people walk back and forth all day long, but you cannot see him. Okay, so he's obstructed by the mirage. The only way that you'll know that he's here is when I push play, if you watch for the flash. And again, it was really windy, so it was difficult to keep that steady. There was a flash earlier. I can go back in a second to show it. Let me go back to the beginning. I saw it at the beginning. There it was right there. Okay, so watch right there. Did you see it? Okay, it's right here where my mouse is. Can you see where the mouse is?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to push back 10 seconds. I'm going to push play again, and then just watch right there. Sorry for the... There's a flash.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw a flash.
There's another flash.
You're saying that was your buddy?
That's right.
Gotcha.
Okay. And I think that this might be another one that's a little bit more clear. We'll see. Give me a second. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
We
I know that this isn't as smooth as I'd like it, so I apologize about that. But in that first one, you did see that little flash there. But basically, that's the idea. The mirage is the obstruction, so that when we get into the distance in terms of talking about ships on the ocean, we have to understand that the alternative explanation, it's possible. Okay, I'm going to say that it is possible that the alternative explanation is that when boats go into the distance, that the refraction that is due to the conditions of the air becomes the obstruction. It's not physical curvature.
Gotcha. You bet. All right, thank you, Tom. If you, we'll give you a. I suppose since before we go to Q&A, we can give you a response and then go into Q&A.
Yeah, for sure. So we know about astronomical refraction, and we can calculate it, and we know it's different at different locations on the Earth. And so, for his hypothesis to be correct, then the atmospheric refraction would have to apply the same everywhere at all times for every ship we ever see and every person we ever see going to the over the horizon, which doesn't happen. We know that doesn't
Okay,
happen.
so you've just made a claim that you would have to substantiate. How can you substantiate that it would have to be uniform everywhere according to a particular standard?
Well, because we can see the ships going over the horizon uniform everywhere. We can see people going over the horizon uniform everywhere.
Okay, but that's what I just showed you, that that's not the case, at least in this instance, where the two ships that I had going into the Mirage, all right, that wasn't uniform because of their size. Their size is going to determine how they are distorted. That is also not curvature. You know, they're going into the distance. They are disappearing. They're not disappearing from the bottom up.
Well, they're still disappearing from the bottom up. They're just disappearing from the point of the mirage bottom up, which inverts them.
No, no. Okay, so again, I would beg to differ that it is not from the bottom up because you have an inferior mirage. So when we talk about objects going away from us in the distance and the angular size of that object shrinks, right, proportionally, correct? When an object goes away from us, if you watch a car driving away from you, it gets smaller proportionally as it goes away, correct?
Right.
Okay, it's not disappearing from the bottom up, it's getting smaller proportionally. That's the
Right.
same thing. That's the same thing that's happening in the mirage. The mirage becomes the angular size and it simply gets smaller. It is not disappearing from the bottom up. I can show that repeatedly.
Okay. So if there's no mirage, we see it disappear from the bottom up.
No, you would see, no, because the mirage is refractive distortion. So the mirage distorts the image. If there were no mirage, you would see the image going into the distance, getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Well, no, we can see there's no mirage in lots of places, like especially on land, where we can watch this happen, or over the desert, or over large
Sure,
swaths of dry places where there isn't a mirage. Or
sure, that is an explanation, but again, we would have to look at something in order to validate what you're saying.
yeah, we can. That was
Because
the point, is that we see this bottom up disappearing of objects over the horizon everywhere on the planet. Now
right,
there are certain mirages, like if we're at night, of course we can't see that because it's too dark. So the fact that there can be a mirage that can prevent this from being seen doesn't stop it from being seen everywhere else in the world. So the fact that we know there aren't mirages in certain cases, we know what causes mirages and where to look for mirages and where they occur over certain distances. So we can know when there's going to be a mirage and when there isn't, and we can tell the difference. So we can see that this phenomenon of things disappearing from the bottom up happens like all over the place, regardless of
okay,
whether or not there's a mirage. And so the fact that
okay,
there's a mirage to block it in certain cases isn't in any way.
I understand.
Gotta-
Again,
Pretty soon here, we've got to give Tom the last word.
okay. All right. I do understand that your explanation that things disappear from the bottom up is uniform everywhere we look. But again, I'm challenging that. I'm saying to you that if we looked at enough instances and paid attention to what we are actually seeing, okay, we are going to see that there is an element of refraction that happens. So in this boat here, again, we watch right here the limit of the water. We see the physical water here. This is the limit of the physical water. Okay. Is it your position, Tom, that the water is continuing to extend into the distance, but we cannot simply see it because of the mirage?
Yes, I think. I'm not
Okay.
sure what you said.
Okay, I'll try it again. Do you believe that if this mirage were not here, we would continue to see water go into the distance until it came to another point in the distance where it looks like it met the land?
Well, it depends on how far the distance is. I'm not sure. Depending on how far away it is, no, because it would be a curve. We just see the edge of the water.
Okay, so again, that would be your burden to prove that the earth is curving. Okay, so you're making an interpretation here that if we were looking farther away and we saw the water end, and we knew that it was far enough away for you to assert that you believe that it is curvature, you would have to prove the earth is curving, not simply declare that what you see in this phenomenon is due to earth curve, because that
All right,
would
right.
be—
You just asked me. You asked, "Do you believe?" And so I just answered yes. That's what I believe.
No, but you added a qualification that if the distance were far enough, the water would begin to curve away. So I'm calling out that clarification that you made that I didn't ask. Okay, I didn't ask you to go into that qualification. If we go far enough, then the water will eventually curve. That's not my question. Okay, so what we're
Well, then
understanding—
you asked me if I expected to see that there was going to be land on the other side of the water, and if it was close enough, like if on my lake at my house, I can see land on the other side of the water because it's close enough. But but I believe in my worldview, if you go far enough, like Lake Superior, you would not see that because it's over the curve. So if it's close enough, yes. If it's far enough away, no. In my worldview, that was
Okay,
the
I can
question.
again, I can show you these two images without the markings on them. This image here clearly shows that the water is going into the distance, and it's getting to a point right here that the distance and our angle in which we're viewing, our eyes are not able to resolve what we are seeing. I think that it is reasonable to interpret what we're seeing is that this water continues along the same plane, the same horizontal the entire way until it meets the land over here. Okay,
We're gonna give.
so go ahead.
We'll if you want to finish that point, and then we're gonna give Tom the last word, and for sure go to Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. So again, the mirage here is the reason why we can't see the water behind it. When we get to places that are farther enough away and we see this water line right here, so I've zoomed out now, right? We don't know how far away this is, but normally our default is that when we see water, when we visually stop seeing water, I think our default is that we assume that that's curvature, and then the water is going to start to curve away from us. But we can clearly see here that we have an inferior mirage farther in the distance, and we understand that water can extend farther into the distance as well. And we know that that's the case because this boat continues to travel along the medium through which it is moving. Okay, this boat is clearly continuing to hit the water over and over and over again. Now, it's not going to all of a sudden start going down over a curve. What it is going to do right now is get smaller and smaller incrementally. It's not disappearing from the bottom up. The top and the bottom are both proportionally getting smaller because it's going into the distance. So again, the reason why this boat is becoming less and less visible to us is because it is going farther and farther away, and the obstruction, that is the point at which we are not going to be able to see the boat any longer, is going to be due exclusively to the distortion caused by refraction. This is not going over a curve. When we fail to see it in a few minutes, when it's finally gone, it will have not gone over a curve. It will have gone farther into the medium that I call the aether band, which is what the cause of all of these refractive distortions, from mirages to anything else that would be considered refraction or distortion due to refraction.
Gotcha. And good old Tom,
Right. So we know about refraction. We know that it can't explain all the curvature. We know it happens in some places, and so it does cause the things we see, and then it doesn't happen in other places, so it can't explain the going over in those places. So we know about the refraction. We know we can calculate exactly.
I'm saying
how much
that it
is.
can. I'm saying that it
Hold
can
on.
in every instance.
Right, I know, and we can provably so that's false. We can just say,
Well,
this is what causes
you'd have to prove
mirages.
that. You've just made a claim that you
Yeah,
would have to prove now.
we can do that. Yes. So stop talking. So we know what a mirage is. We know what causes it. We know how much air density is required for it. We know the air density of the different locations because we can literally go to them and measure the air density. So we know where mirages can happen and they can't. So we can go to an area where it can't be caused by that, and then you see the same phenomenon of people disappearing from the bottom up. So we know that isn't the cause of the apparent disappearing of things going over the horizon bottom up. It doesn't cause it. It can distort things in certain cases. Most of the time it can't, because there just can't be that mirage there due to what the kinds of air density required to cause that mirage don't exist in that location. So it can't explain it in most cases.
We're going to jump into the Q&A. I understand, plain truth. I know you've got another round in the barrel ready to fire, but just because otherwise we'll be here.
No, you're fine. It's fine.
So, thrilled to have your questions, folks, and I'm going to read these out, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. If you're out there, we will try to get to your question if you happen to ask it now, although we have a decent list already, but just letting you know that it's like we might not get to every question. Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat, you sicko. He says, Tom Jump and James make a cute couple. Nasty guy. Just, he's projecting. Fabian Men of 36 Go, thanks for your super chat. They said, take a picture of the horizon, pick your favorite photo editor, scale it horizontally, smaller, in parentheses. A curve will appear. This does not happen when you scale a line horizontally. Even a flurfer can do it. I'm not sure who that's supposed to insult.
Flurfer is a flat earther, so he's saying that this is a test anyone can do, including a flat earther.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. Well, I mean, if one of you want to respond to it, you can, but you don't have to. C4, thanks for your super chat. They said, I came here to see crashes versus the plain truth. I definitely believe that. I had not heard from Crashes today. I think he had said he got back to me, and by then we had already asked Tom to come in and fill in as a substitute. So sorry about that, Crashes. The door is open. If you want to come on in the future, I can try to get you the plain truth if he's willing to come back. Otherwise, we can ask others as well. So Steven Steen, thanks for your other super chat. He said Daryl Frost is Tom's biggest fan.
I don't know who that is.
Ronald Bendanka, thanks for your super chat. They said, let's use super chat to get plain truth a telescope. Aha, plain truth. What do you think of them apples?
Yeah, I mean, if he wants me to start investigating the heavens, I mean, sure, if he wants me to get a telescope, but I don't need a telescope to make the observations that I'm making here in the Chesapeake Bay or in California.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Next up, very excited to have your super chat as well from Robert Summers. Robert says, how would tides be calculated on a flat earth? Plain truth.
Yeah, again, this is the same thing I did with my argument or my discussion with MC Toon. That's not my argument. I haven't made any claims about predicting tides or understanding where tides are coming from. So it's a non sequitur. It's not my subject.
Well, that's what he's asking. He's asking, how would a flat earther explain the tides?
I'm not prepared to answer that question because I haven't investigated the tides, and nor do I even have an interest in figuring out why they work.
Fair enough.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Next up, Pax Americana. Thanks for your super chat. They said, yo, James, I deadass had a dream about you the other night. Thanks. And I am like, I don't know if I want to know what that was, but I appreciate that. Glad I'm on your mind. And then they said, also ask how and why the flat earth has been the most well-kept secret in history. Plain truth.
It's not a matter of labeling it the best well-kept secret. Okay. So if you live in a world that has been presented to you, it's again, unless there's a good reason for you to question that world, you're not going to question it, right? So that's why I say reasonable doubt is the mother of all conspiracy. If there's no reasonable doubt, if there's no reason for you to doubt what you've been told, you're not going to ask questions necessarily. So the only way I can say that it is the best kept secret is because we have all accepted the world that has been presented to us. And that's how I opened up the beginning of my statements. The world that we have been presented with is a world that depends on insanity. That world to exist, it would be insane because we don't live in a world where those physics operate. Those physics only operate in places we can't get to except for our imagination.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up, have a super chat from Steven Steen, real sicko tonight. He says, Tom Jump, in parentheses, giving an alternative possibility isn't a good argument. Then he says, also Tom Jump, in every other debate, quote unquote, some unknown natural cause could explain it. I think he's
Right.
trying
That's true. That was kind of the point of my introduction. Just giving an alternative explanation isn't evidence. Yes.
Gotcha. Let's see. So giving an alternative possibility isn't a good argument. Some unknown natural cause could explain it. Thank you, Steven Steen. I know I'm going to hear...
I think he's agreeing with me. I think he said I'm right, like normal. He always says that. He's always like, TJump is right about everything.
He is a big fan of yours. That's true.
I know.
Except for what you said about refraction.
Fourth dimension Jake gets a jab in there like that. Fourth dimensional Jake. Flat Earth. Ha! Laugh out loud. LMAO. Come on, bro. Really? No. Seriously. No. They don't seem to be persuaded on this topic.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and I get that, because it's not something that I would expect someone to be persuaded of right away. I'm simply asking for the consideration that I found the video that I was looking for earlier. I'm simply asking for the consideration for you to consider the reality that we are seeing farther now here in this image, because refraction has been eliminated. Okay, this is later in the day, and this is earlier in the day where we have high refraction, and we cannot see as far as we would like. Okay, coming right here is that same image. It's paused. Going back real quick. Okay, right here. Okay, this is the same image that we just saw a moment ago. Okay, now we cannot see the shoreline. We cannot see the rock formations. This water, hold on just real quick. This water is higher up. Okay, when the refraction drops, that that scene will open up and we'll be able to see farther. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so I know that I wasn't able to pull this video up as quickly as I would have liked. So, but yeah, I don't expect you to buy it hook, line, and sinker right now. I'm simply asking you not to give it a stiff arm, but to simply think through my presentation.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Next up, Andrew Handelsman. Appreciate your super chat. They said, James, debate on modern day debate. That's nice of you. Thanks so much. I was thinking about that. I was like, if I do debate again, like, should be on modern day, but it's like, it feels weird on your, like, if you're in your own channel, like, it's like kind of like pooping in your own bed. It just doesn't feel right. All right.
Yes,
next,
like everyone else, you mean, who actually does debates on their own channel?
Maybe you're right. Maybe I should. I was just thinking, I was like, it would be nice for me to go on other people's channels, because I always have people on, and so I'm like, I might as well kind of get to visit other people at their channels. But like I said, Tom won't have me on. I was like, Tom, can I come back on and debate you? He's like, no, don't meet me
James
again.
is afraid.
So,
James is afraid.
General Ballsack, thanks for your super chat. They said, plain truth, if you believe in the flat earth, why haven't you personally searched for the edge?
I mean, it's hard for me to take these kinds of comments seriously. I mean, honestly, I don't think that deserves even a serious answer.
Gotcha.
Well, I think it does. Like, I mean, wouldn't that be a good way to test if the world is flat?
No, I have enough evidence right here that I can demonstrate again in a more professional fashion now that I've got my things pulled up. But my channel is full of demonstrations where I show demonstrably the reason why we can't see as far as we think is because of refraction. And when we do see farther, it's because the refraction has been lifted. Okay. at no point is there curvature along this line because we continue to see farther, right? You know that that's the argument. We're seeing too far. We shouldn't be seeing this object, but we do see it. The reason why we see it is because the Aether band has lessened the refraction and the visibility becomes more accessible. Both distance and objects become more visible when refraction is taken into account. Simply because you do not always have an inferior mirage does not mean that refraction isn't the cause for the distortion of what you might interpret to be obstruction due to Earth curve.
Well, yeah, but nobody's convinced by that because we can already explain that through normal science. But if you found like the edge, that would like convince everyone.
Okay, you're wrong. You've just simply made an assertion right now that you would have to prove. Simply because you have countered what I said with a statement doesn't mean that you're correct.
No, the point of the question is that if you find the edge,
I don't need to find the edge.
That would convince people.
I don't need to find the edge. I'm not trying to prove the edge. I'm trying to prove an alternative explanation for the claim that boats go over a curve. They do not. The only thing that obstructs boats when they go into the distance is refraction, whether or not it's just distortion in terms of what we would consider blurriness, or if it is an inferior mirage. It's always obstructed due to refraction. It's never curvature.
We've got to jump back into the Q&A if we can. Just keep moving through. Fourth Dimensional Jake, thanks for your super chat. They said, too much to debunk in sailboat marriage. Limit to text. Is that some sort of cool slang that Tom and his friends are now saying nowadays? I don't understand.
I think he means that bringing up a video like that, there's so much wrong with it that you'd have to address. It would take too much time, and so you'd want to limit it to like a text-based conversation instead of like a over online video or something. I think that's the argument.
Gotcha. Thank you. See, Tom always understands like the young people slang. I'm just kind of along.
You mean English? Yeah.
Next up, Bearded Devil 1864. Thanks for your super chat. They said, Travis, can you tell the difference between a sheet of plastic and the Chesapeake Bay? Pretty sassy there, Travis.
Yeah, sure. When I take it for granted that someone's not trying to trick me, I'm not going to look very closely. Not only that, but I was driving at the time, so no, I didn't look at your trick very closely, Bearded Devil. So,
is there some history here about this question that we're not?
Yeah. There's a backstory. Yeah, there's a backstory.
Sounds
here.
Juicy. Is it a cool story?
Yeah, he's in love with me and he's trying to fight it, so he's coming after me and attacking me so that everybody doesn't think he loves me.
Covering his tracks, eh? Okay.
Just like Steven, right?
Nasty guy, that's Steven. Let's see. So, I'm sorry, I just can't resist a comment about Tom's chair. Caleb Kismet says, fact, TJump's chair is so huge, it distorts space-time.
So true.
It's
so true.
The greatest clamshell chair, as Inspiring Philosophy calls it. Fourth Dimensional Jake, thanks for... Did we just read this? Like, I'm honestly a little bit zapped. But they said, globe is proven fact, not assumed. Flat Earth, not even joke. Why you got to do that to me, Jake? I don't know what that means. Apparently, neither do these guys. Vegan Goy, thanks for your super chat. They said, I'd never join a club that would have me. That's good. I like that. I can't remember who I mentioned. I can't remember who that's from, but that's funny. Next up, thanks for your super chat from GPS. They said, the plain truth, are you replacing Jaren on Globebusters?
That makes no sense whatsoever. I have no idea why he's asking that question.
Well, maybe Jaren said, like, oh, hey.
No, see, no, somebody else asked me. It was Jose JG Gonzalez on his channel asked me the other day. He asked me two questions. If I am affiliated with Globebusters or if I'm going to be affiliated. And the answer was no. So pay attention, GPS.
Gotcha. Got some sass coming up from up here. Thank you for that. Next up, Dave Gar, thanks for your super chat. They said, James, what is your opinion on neutrality bias? I define that as giving equal credence to disparate positions despite overwhelming evidence. Glad to support the channel, by the way. Love from Huntsville, Texas. Oh, well, thanks for your super chat. Appreciate it. By the way, I lived in Nacogdoches, Texas for a couple of years. So if I remember right, that's Huntsville's pretty close. And I think I've driven through it. The neutrality bias, that's a great question. To be honest, this is the first time I've ever heard of it. Now, not that I'm denying it or doubting it. I think it's a really interesting question, though, because it's let's see. So I think it's kind of like it would kind of seem to be like a bias on the meta level, like on a broader level. It's like kind of like it wouldn't be per se that I was like moderating in a biased way, but I was kind of like you could say maybe somebody might argue that the channel is representing the world in a biased way by putting views that we usually think of as unusual or non-evidenced on a platform in equal speaking time with other views that are much more like evidenced. I'm not going to say which ones those are, but that's a really interesting question. I do get that a lot. I always kind of think about one thing I will point to is in psychology, the elaboration likelihood model, or it's like a kind of a theory within psychology, says that if you want to change people's ideas short term, use emotion, but if you want to change them long term, use like evidence and facts. So I figure like, well, if there are views that are represented on here, like one time we had a guy who claimed that he like was doing magic on the stream, and he like claimed he was like putting chicken in our stomachs, and it was really weird. It was like over a year ago. I don't think most people would be convinced by that because there wasn't very good strong evidence, and so if they were convinced, it was like kind of wore off fast, I would think, at least according to that theory of persuasion and psychology. But long story short, thanks for your patience on that long-winded answer. I never get questions, so I had to speak when I could. Thanks for your super chat, Alan H. They said, the plain truth, why are lighthouses so high on a flat earth? So in other words, if it is a flat earth, like why do they make sure lighthouses are so high in the air?
Because we understand that angular resolution and what might be called the table limit limits the distance at which we can see certain objects. So if I can I share real quick again?
You betcha.
Okay, let me go back to the just real quick. I'm just going to show you. So as we watch, can you see the boat?
Yes.
Okay. As we watch this boat go into the distance, okay, it's right here. Okay. So if this boat were, I'm going to back up just a little bit to get a little bit bigger. Okay. So this boat is going to continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, the reason why we can see this part of it right here is because it is high enough. Okay. As this gets farther and farther away, the angular size is going to continue to get smaller and smaller. And so we're going to lose the ability to resolve this image, and we're not going to see it any longer. However, if this were 3 times as high, let's go over here to this boat. See this boat? This boat is closer to us and higher, so now we can see more of it. It's the same concept with the lighthouse. If this is a lighthouse at 10 miles away, and this is a lighthouse at 20 miles away, but there's a lighthouse over here at 30 miles away and we can't see it, the reality is that the whole dynamic of what's happening here due to refraction, distance, and the natural limitation of our eye goes into effect as if we were to make a gradation of this, higher to middle to none at all, okay? But if this lighthouse 30 miles away was 15 times as high, like a skyscraper, well, we'd see that. So the reason why they make lighthouses that tall is to overcome the limits of our eyes, not to overcome curvature.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And next up, appreciate your super chat from General Ballsack. Thanks so much. Oh, that's right. Slam RN told me that it's the Z, or is it the S is supposed to be silent. General Balzac. Think that's right. Thanks for your super chat. They said, Tom Jump, why do you believe in the globe Earth, and why do you think people argue against it?
I believe in the globe Earth because we've proven it. We can like literally just go to space and turn around and see it. I think people argue against it because that's just a tendency of people to always go against common ideas, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing that we always challenge commonly held ideas. So I don't think it's bad at all that people argue for flat Earth. It's just been proven false, and it's the job of the globers to find a compelling way to argue against or to compel the flat earthers that their arguments don't work. So yeah, it's just part of human nature.
Gotcha. Thanks very much. Next up, we can try to get through a few of the standard questions as well. I think I've got... Let me know if I missed any super chats. That's one thing that I felt really bad. Someone I think it was like 2 streams ago, someone gave a $20 super chat and I totally missed it. I whiffed. For some reason I didn't see it. Very embarrassing. Very sad. Okay. Jay, I think was it Jay Shy? I hope you're well, Jay. Okay. Thanks for your question. Fourth Dimensional Jake. They said, question for Flat Earth. Why do ships and buildings on the horizon always disappear from the bottom up?
I made it pretty clear that my argument is against that fallacy. It is a fallacy that objects disappear from the bottom up due to Earth curve, okay? In my experience, I personally have never captured a boat disappearing from the bottom up due to Earth curve. It has always been obstructed or distorted due to the index of refraction in the air.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Genius Tracks, thanks for your super chat. Just came in. They said, the globe is my General Balzac. Laugh out loud. Love y'all. Thanks, Genius Tracks. Genius Tracks has been with us for a long time. I think it's about a year, at least. So, totally appreciate that. Let's see if
he's followed, I think, my channel since like the first video. Like he's been here for a long time.
Don't get cocky. Okay, next up, let me just quick check and see if I had missed any, because I really do appreciate people's support. And so we do appreciate that. I'm surprised, Brian Stevens, are you out there? I thought you would have had a question. He's always a wise guy. But it's always fun, folks. Do want to let you know about a couple of things coming up. We had already mentioned, you of course probably have heard about Destiny versus Vosh next month. We are excited that tomorrow we are going to have Dr. Swamidas and an atheist friend on to debate the argument from bad design. And so that's roughly speaking. I mean, the atheist doesn't think that it's like bad design in the literal sense. He's saying like, hey, it's so poorly designed that we shouldn't think it's designed. So I use that word like kind of loosely. Also, am very excited that Tom Jump will be back on tomorrow night. He's going to be debating newcomer Carl S. Cosgrove. That'll be a lot of fun. And very excited as well. This week's a busy week. If I remember right on the schedule, Darth Dawkins, who a lot of people never knew this, Darth Dawkins, Tom Jump's dad, will be on this Monday night. So that's going to be a terrific one. And no joke, this honestly has been pretty crazy. iHypocrite will be on next week with, I think it's on Twitter, he goes by, I'm still new to it, because his names are different on YouTube and Twitter. SJW Debate Boy. Yes, I don't, but it'll be fun. They're going to debate. This is a juicy one. This is one where I'm a little bit like, is YouTube going to slap us on the wrist? It's what is more dangerous to the West, Islam or white nationalism? So that's going to be a juicy one. Thanks for your super chat. Nathan Artwork, we appreciate it. They said, how can the plain truth argue a point with no evidence?
Yeah, I mean, I admit that I had dropped the ball on being able to give a quick presentation. I do have plenty of evidence. The evidence that I did give you was a bit brief and maybe not as smooth as you might like. But again, this is the beginning. If you've never heard this argument before, all I'm asking you to do is not to reject it straight away, but to simply try to understand the argument and uh, give my evidence its day in court. And my channel is, full of my observations that I make. So I do apologize for not having that video more at the ready earlier.
Gotcha. We are always glad you are here. And Kamakiri 700, thanks for your super chat. They asked, plain truth, do ships' navigators think they are on a ball or a plane? And if a ball, and if it is a ball, are the Navy instruments telling them lies to make them think it's a plane?
That is out of my expertise in terms of being able to tell you how their instruments work. I'm going to tell you that they exist on a plane, and their instruments can present that information to them any way it wants. It can give them a diagram, it can give them a grid, whatever. It can give them coordinates that can be considered to represent a curved surface, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Earth, that the surface is curved. So my answer again would just simply be to say that they exist on a plane. They travel over a plane. They travel over water that does not curve, but their coordinates, they understand. Their coordinates imply that they are.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Next up, Subtracted. Thanks for your super chat. They said, keep up the good work, Tom. You got a fan out there, Tom. Tom takes it in stride.
Thanks. Always, yes. Will do.
Too cool for school over there, Tom, in his clamshell chair. So, very excited, folks. A lot of fun stuff coming up. We're going to wrap it up. I want to say thanks for hanging out with us. It's been a total blast. Let us know if you are kind of like, oh, snap. Uh-oh. Okay, I guess let me just figure out really quick. Fourth Dimension says I missed his super chats. So sorry about that. I'm going to find him right now. I'm so glad you told me before we went off air. But do want to mention. What was
Didn't last time you say that there wasn't one? It was just to troll you.
Sometimes sick people like to do that. But I think he's telling the truth. Let's see here. Fourth Dimensional Jake. I just had something on the tip of my tongue that I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was. So we got that. Why do you believe the globe Earth? Dave Gar. We definitely got... Yeah, we got that most recent one. Oh, okay. Fourth Dimensional Jake, you're right. That's embarrassing. They said, tides predict a globe. Debunk or coincide. Flat Earth, or I think they meant concede, flat Earth is a joke.
Tides don't predict.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Fourth Dimensional Jake. Also, they said, I've driven on the left in the USA for over a mile with no issues. Glad I don't drive on that street. Let's see. Thanks so much. I think we've got that. Yeah, we got all caught up there. So thanks so much. Andrew Handelsman, thanks for your, they said, pre-show loot. Appreciate your super chat. And then we got Fabian's. Yeah, so that is, I think, all we have. So thanks so much. Fourth Dimensional Jake said in another super chat, I never troll, James. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Nathan Artwork, thanks for your super chat. Just saw that come in. If you meant to attach a comment to that, feel free. In the normal live chat, just shoot a normal message in there, and I can read off your super chat that you intended. Otherwise, if it's just a gift to the channel, thanks so much. And just trying to make sure. Oh, Stupid Horror Energy is in the house. She says, Tom's chair smells like cheese and arse. That's pretty hot. Let's see.
It's her arse, so she should know.
Let's see. That's pretty nasty. Andrew Hanselman said, have a good night, James. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Great circle routes. So yes, thanks so much, folks. Appreciate it. We hope you have a great night, and we will see you soon. Yes, TJump. I saw Sammy Latvia. TJump does have a Discord server. I think that's linked at his channel, where you can click on that little app or that little icon. So thanks so much, folks. If you would like to debate, especially on topics like science, like creation, evolution, flat Earth, globe Earth, maybe like whether or not there was a moon landing, or if it's stuff like Christianity versus atheism, does God exist, feel free to shoot an email. And if you happen to just let us know like what topic you'd like, as well as what position you take. Ideally, if you have a link that you can share from a past debate that you've done, just so we can kind of get a feel for you, and especially, to be honest, so we can see that you got a mic so that people can hear you through your mic, because sometimes people come on and they've got a mic like Tom's and can't even hear them. It's very embarrassing for them. So let's see. Thanks so much, folks. And we're always happy to have new opinions, new viewpoints on. We hope you really do feel welcome, whether you be Christian, atheist, Republican, Democrat, flat earther, glober, and all of the strange creatures in between. We're glad that you're hanging out with us here as we try to have a nonpartisan channel. There's no stances, no after shows, trashing the debaters, no matter how bad I want to trash Tom personally. No, he's good. Look at him there. Like, he's a happy little guy. We love Tom. We love Plain Truth, too. Are you there, Plain Truth?
I'm still here, El Guapo.
Gotcha. So thanks so much for being here. We hope you guys all take care. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable.